The light bulb really went on for me in this area when I was a pediatrics resident. I spent an awful lot of time picking up the pieces after people got ill, or one thing I remember, I spent a lot of time in the neonatal intensive care unit. Residents tended to spend a lot of time there. And I remember thinking, I'm spending all this time taking care of these babies, but what am I doing to prevent them from landing here in the first place? And I think as my thinking evolved about that, it became clear that the places that really influence the need for healthcare, that it's very little of it happens in healthcare providers' offices. It happens out in the community. And that means getting involved in advocacy and in engaging with the community so that you can build the political will that's necessary to address whatever the problem is. You know, when I first got involved with the foundation, we really weren't doing much in the way of advocacy. And I remember thinking when I came on board, being a little intimidated by how much money we had at the foundation. It seemed like an awful lot of money. But when you get down to it, for the kinds of problems that we really need to address, it's a drop in the ocean. So that doesn't mean that foundations can't be incredibly influential and powerful, but even if you had 10 times the amount of money that we have here at Northwest Health Foundation, you still could only take your influence so far unless you get engaged around policy making and advocacy. So it's a matter of being able to take the things that we're doing to scale and make them have lasting impact that's truly sustainable. The only way to do that is through the policy realm and with advocacy. I think the best advice I could give them is not to be afraid of this whole area, not to be afraid of working with government structures to do this. You know, over the last 30 years or so, in many circles, I think government has gotten a bad name. And certainly in the foundation world, there's a sense that they want to be, the foundation world needs to be separate from government. And it is separate from government. But it's much more powerful if it's working somehow together with the governmental structures. I think for us that was a real challenge to overcome some of those attitudinal barriers more than anything else. I remember one of our trustees saying something pretty derogatory about government early on, something like, well, how do we know that the money isn't just going to be wasted on, I can't even remember what it was he was focused on. And there were a lot of ways that we could know how the money would actually be spent if we made that award. So I think, I guess that's my biggest, the most important thing I think in approaching trustees is there's I guess one other thing kind of along those lines that maybe people will find reassuring is it's not a yes or no kind of decision. There's a whole spectrum of activities that foundations can be involved in, some of which I don't think most trustees would have any trouble with, and there are some that probably 95% of trustees would be very uncomfortable with. And each foundation has to find the right balance for their particular board and for their particular mission. I think the way we did it was to be very explicit about exactly what we were doing. We developed a kind of a roadmap. So if we were to get engaged in a particular policy activity, what would we do? And how do we assure that the board has a reasonable voice in it? There were some issues that seemed like they probably would be off the table because they were too controversial and so forth. Even taking those off the table, there still were plenty of issues that we could engage in about which we could have pretty easily reached consensus that they were important and useful areas for us. So we developed I guess it's really a procedure that we use to analyze particular advocacy opportunities, think about what the specific niches that the foundation could fill, and really make the case for why it's important that we should get engaged on that particular issue. Like anything else, there's only so much bandwidth that the foundation has, there's only so much time, there's only so much staff time, there's only so much board time and energy that you can put into any particular one. So you want to be very strategic about it. I think once the board thought through all of that and really realized that they could play a very active role in shaping this, this wasn't going to be like opening the barn door and all of a sudden the horses were just going to run away and they'd be left in the dust. I think that really helped a great deal. And we have taken some fairly aggressive stands. I guess the one other thing I would say that I think has also been helpful, not only in making the board more comfortable, but also in being more effective, is that we've included in that process some pretty active listening to our community partners. We don't want to be out there advocating for something out of the blue. So we really want to be doing it as part of a coalition, as part of a larger group of organizations. And so we have used our advocacy processes to really bolster and provide some energy to some of the community processes that we have spent some time cultivating, the convening work we've done with community partners. And I think that's been a very powerful combination.